Okay, so that's done. We are waiting just for a few more attendees, so we will just give our team just a couple more minutes if that's okay. If you're not on mute, I'm about to mute everyone. And of course, for those presenting this afternoon, just please remember to unmute yourself before you get started. All right, look, we're 3 minutes past the hour, so we might get started. We are recording the meeting. We will be sending a PDF version of the presentation as well as a link to the recording. So obviously for those of you that have joined, you'd be familiar with your colleagues that were unable to attend. So please remind them to check their email for the link and the recording. Okay, so we're going to get started. I firstly want to thank again everyone for making the time to participate this afternoon. Also, I want to greatly thank the team that has been working on this for some time now, namely the team at ICN, Raylo, for your introduction initially to Vanessa and her team. And I also obviously want to thank Vanessa and her team for working with us over the last period of time to get to this point where we're actually now ready to present to the network and then soft launch this partnership to our suppliers and stakeholders on Monday. So I also wanted to mention that Vanessa has been unwell. Yesterday we had a bit of a catch up and she was not the best. So thanks, Vanessa, for pushing through, and I think you're feeling a little bit better. So really appreciate you making the time to soldier on this afternoon. Okay, so I'm about to share the screen, which will be the presentation, just continuing to admit people as we go. Can everyone see the screen okay? Just a thumbs up would be great. Perfect. Very good. Thank you. Okay, so this is going to be a bit of a team effort with regards to presenting this afternoon. I'll be doing a brief introduction, handing over to Karen to talk about things marketing, collateral, and launch. And then obviously Ken to talk about some of the technical aspects of the product. Vanessa will jump in to talk about the product in detail and to also run through a demonstration. And then we'll wrap up. If we do have time, we will jump into any questions. We'll just see how we go timing wise, okay? So I'm going to get started. I might just ask Ken if you're okay to continue to admit people as we're presenting. Is that okay? If you can just give me a thumbs up. Thank you very much. Otherwise, I might miss them as I just focus on the screen and the first 5 slides. So we'll get started. Thanks again, everyone, for joining in.
Andrew, I think you might want to make it full screen again for the PowerPoint.
That full screen now?
No, it's not showing presentation mode, Andrew.
Just bear with me. Sorry, everyone. Is that better? Mike, could you please unmute yourself? And I just might need you to just confirm if you can see full screen mode now.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Okay, so we'll get started. Firstly, I just want to introduce the product and essentially cover off why we're doing this. So we all know that it's very important for our suppliers, stakeholders, projects to focus on having net zero targets in place. And for a lot of our suppliers, there's probably questions around how they even get started on their journey. Infrastructure and construction projects are particularly being targeted globally. And we wanted to find a solution so that we could assist, obviously, our key stakeholders on their journey to obviously carbon neutral and their net zero targets. Large companies are beginning to look at their supply chains. You'd all be aware, obviously, with your involvement within projects that many large organisations, primes, government, the tier 1 contractors are focused on their environmental, social and governance frameworks across a whole range of areas. And obviously clean tech, clean energy, and assisting suppliers with getting to a point where they can actually look at their own footprint towards carbon neutral and carbon zero is very important. SMEs do lack the opportunity to get started, and of course, being able to provide a solution for them is very important for us from an ICN perspective. So ICN and ClimateClever are providing SMEs with a streamlined, affordable solution to measure their footprint and to start to take action to reduce emissions and become carbon neutral. So what is ClimateClever? Essentially, it's an innovative online platform to help businesses begin their journey to net zero while also saving them money. And Vanessa will capture that when she has an opportunity to jump in. They've already helped users save more than $2 million in their utility costs. And that's something that obviously it's not just a matter of becoming carbon neutral towards their journey of net zero, but there's also some savings involved in the way that they conduct their businesses as well. So just a bit of context and a bit of background with regards to the journey. We initially had a workshop that was held with ClimateClever back in June this year with the ICNL network. From that conversation, ICNL and ClimateClever developed a strategic agreement for 12 months initially. So after this 12-month period, if successful, the ClimateClever platform and the API will be integrated into ICN Gateway for a seamless user experience. So what would the strategy there is to get through a first 12-month trial, ensure that everything's working, that the promise versus delivery is there for all stakeholders, and then we can solidify things going forward and plan on that integration work with the technical team. Just to summarise the benefits for our suppliers on ICN Gateway, the first thing here is that they will receive a 10% discount to the ClimateClever platform. So if they were to sign up direct with ClimateClever, obviously that would not be the case. So there is a definite benefit for suppliers to join through ICN. They will receive a carbon footprint report, a standard tier report, and Vanessa will go into a little bit more detail again when she demos the product. We are looking at 4 tailored webinars for ICN members. Karen will capture that very briefly when she gets to her slides. There will be an option to have a carbon neutral badge displayed on ICN Gateway Premium members. So you'd all be familiar with the badging that we have at the moment, of course, with Indigenous suppliers. And so we're looking to ensure that we can also highlight against our suppliers that have become carbon neutral, that they've achieved that awesome result. It also provides an exciting opportunity to get ahead of the curve, position themselves as climate leaders and create a competitive advantage. And as you would all be aware, with the ESG focus for many of our large clients, for our suppliers to get on board is extremely important, because we will see a lot more focus with major project proponents, government looking for cleaner suppliers to help them execute their projects. And as an example, it goes without saying that if you're embarking on a large clean tech project like a solar farm or a wind farm, there's going to be a real focus on ensuring that the supply chain that you're using to execute that project is also on a really positive journey when it comes to carbon neutrality. So I'll jump over to Karen, who's going to talk through the next 3 slides.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Hello, everybody. So as Andrew mentioned, we will be holding a series of webinars to help any SMEs who join up to the ClimateClever platform to take them on their carbon neutral journey. So they must be on the caveat for this webinar is that they must be on a paid tier. So if you join on the free tier, the webinars will not be available, but the rest of what's available under that subscription level is still available. So our plan is that it starts on November the 1st. So just getting started, what is the carbon footprint? setting some boundaries and identifying relevant emission sources. The second one will be held in December. So that is how to locate and enter your key data. So what information is needed, what assumptions, explorations need to be made, and how to enter the data into the platform. Following that, there'll be another one in February. We took the decision not to hold one in January because we felt like we would probably be missing out on a large chunk of the audience if we held it in January. So that is identifying and managing actions to reduce your emissions. And the fourth one is going carbon neutral. So that will include finalising your report, celebrating your achievements, and being able to access that report through the dashboard tile on your Gateway profile. Thanks, Andrew. So we're going to do a soft launch on the 10th of October. So that is Monday. There is a landing page which the social media and the EDM will go to. We do have a strategy in place. There will be social media as well. And as I mentioned, there's the dashboard tile. So you can just see on this slide that the dashboard tile is initially an advertisement, essentially, just to encourage suppliers to find out more about what the ClimateClever journey would look like. So that find out more would take you through to the register your interest page. But once you've actually started and you've signed up and you're on that journey, the tile messaging will change depending on what part of the journey that you are on, and it will end up with the final, you have congratulations, you've taken steps and here's your report. So that will all be accessible through the Gateway company profile. Thanks, Andrew. So yeah, so as I mentioned, there's a landing page that the EDMs will take people through to. On this page, there is a link through to the registration page on the ClimateClever platform. So the first EDM will be sent on Monday, and then 2 weeks after that, and then 1 week after those 2 weeks. So as I mentioned before, there is the webinars that we're also running information sessions. So this is just not actually taking you through the journey, it's just a bit of an information session about what it is to get on the ClimateClever journey and to sign up with ClimateClever. And as I mentioned, there's a social media campaign that we will be launching as well with the various tiles there, and the media release will probably go out on Tuesday because Mondays is not a great day for a media release. And obviously I want to work with all of you to develop whatever slides it is that you may need to put into your presentations. Hopefully a lot of it is captured in here that I can just send to you, but I'll also make sure that this presentation is available on the ICN Hub following this presentation today. So yeah, so as I mentioned, it's not just the information, the webinars, there's also the information sessions. So there will be a link in the EDM to sign up for these information sessions. The first one kicks off on the 17th of October. We're trying to be a little bit flexible with the timing because we understand that people have different priorities, different times of the day. So there's one later in the afternoon, one around lunchtime, and then another morning session. There will be more sessions. We are just determining and finalising the dates for them. But once it's all been decided, that will be available on the registration page as well.
Thanks very much, Karen. Appreciate that, and appreciate you running through that. And of course, also want to give you a massive shout out for all the hard work that you've done on this. So thanks on behalf of the team. So we're just going to jump over to Ken now, who's going to take us through from a technical perspective, a couple of slides on the typical journey and how our suppliers will get involved.
Thanks, Andrew. So essentially this is just a user journey diagram that was put together, basically demonstrating the workflow that is potentially achievable depending on where you're entering the workflow. So as you can see on the left, we've got the promotional landing page that Vanessa and Karen have put together. From there, they can go straight through to the sign up page. Now we've made a slight change here. It's not the sign up page that you'll be taken to. It'll be a registration of interest page, and then they will continue through to the sign up process. Now, the way that the ClimateClever system is set up, we have an ICN branded portal of ClimateClever, and this is how we collect all of the information and associate it back to an ICN profile. Moving off to the right, we will then leverage an API that the ClimateClever team have built for us to actually query the statuses. And depending on the 4 statuses that are available to them on the platform, we will modify the gateway tile that is presented to them on their gateway profile. So if you jump back to the left, the second entry point is that gateway tile that we've mentioned. There are 4 stages. First one is the introductory, and then there's 3 other components from there. You can also get through to the landing page from our promotional system messages. That can be done through Gateway. And then, of course, the 4th entry point is from a generic social media component or an external link that has been promoted through. So that's the end-to-end journey through the process at this point in time. As we mentioned, there will be a phase 2 where that integration will be pulled directly into Gateway without the need to go through to an external platform. Next slide, please, Andrew. So as you can see, there's 2 main entry points. Initially, we'll be sending people through to the register interest page, which is co-branded with ClimateClever and ICN, with some basic details being collected at that point. Once you have gone through and you've created your initial point, we'll send you through to the sign up page or the login page if you have an existing profile on that platform from those dashboard tiles. So these are the actual landing pages that people will see when they go through from the various entry points. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Ken, for running through that. So now we're going to jump across to Vanessa and obviously formally and properly introduce you, Vanessa. I know we did that very briefly at the start, but obviously Vanessa is the founder of ClimateClever and has been working with us since we formed the relationship through the introduction from Ray over in WA. So thanks again, Vanessa, for joining in and for working with us all on this journey. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you and your team over the next 12 months. So officially over to you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Can I just say we are very, very excited about working with you guys as well. This is a huge opportunity for us. So thank you so much. Just very briefly, some background about me. So I did my PhD around it was actually decarbonising cities and regions, and so this is also very exciting because it feels like a bit of a homecoming, coming back to really working in sort of more with infrastructure and construction, and as well as all the other areas that have and suppliers that are in your platform. And yeah, just a bit about ClimateClever. We've been around for 4 years. We've been developing our platform since then. We very much have tried to target SMEs, small to medium businesses. Our mission is to make climate action affordable and accessible for everyone. So really seeing that sort of gap in the market where you've got those bigger companies with bigger budgets who can afford to pay for consultants to do all this work. And then, you've sort of got the smaller companies that often get left out because they're like, well, we can't afford to be a consultant. So what we were trying to do with our platform is sort of give everyone the opportunity to get started on that journey in a really affordable and accessible way, realizing that everyone really does have a role to play, but in particular right now with this, the pressure that's probably starting to come on them from, their clients that are starting to take an interest in what's called Scope 3 emissions, which is those supplier-based emissions. So we've tried to keep our subscriptions affordable. So we are a software as a service company. We have got a free tier. So the free tier really just enables the businesses to sign up and start to have a play around. They can access up to 3 emission sources in terms of adding data to measure the carbon footprint. And they can only add 1 site to their to their account. But they can access the actions and look around, but they won't be able to obviously produce a report or anything under that free tier. The $500 tier gives them access to a few more emission sources that they can play around with, but it still doesn't give them access to the report. So the report comes from the $1,500 tier, so that's the standard tier and above. And they also get access to more emission sources and then a little bit more support from us as well. So we'll start to, we'll provide a 30-minute consultation with them as well under that standard tier, which is just really helping them to understand what sort of emissions that they will need to include. And then the pro tier comes with 5.5 hours support as well from us. And then we can also go into enterprise if it is a bit of a larger company that's a bit more complex, they might need a bit more support as well. I just wanted to stress as well, when I show you the platform, we are always adding more emission sources to the platform, and this is a really exciting, again, opportunity for us because we'll need to be adding a whole bunch of new emission sources, but we're just waiting, obviously, to see who's going to sign up so we can work with them to understand what sort of emissions we'll need to add for them as well. So yeah, is the next slide, or should I? Yeah, I think straight to demo. Okay, all right. So this is always a risky business, having a technology platform. Let's hope that all the technology works. Hang on a sec. And then I'll need a. Oh yeah, I can't see you guys now. So can someone shout out if you can see that?
You're all good.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll just try and do a relatively brief demo today, but as you can see here, there's a button right here saying view demo, and there's a 20-minute demo there that you can go into as well afterwards. When you first land in the platform, this is a dashboard page, but up the top here you can see this is sort of the journey that we're trying to take the user on. It's not supposed to be just a calculator. It is trying to help them through the measurement process, and then also helping them to identify actions to reduce, being able to track their performance and progress along throughout the year. And then if they wanted to, they can purchase offsets here and then generate their report over here. That's sort of the thing that we're trying to disrupt around that sort of consultancy model, where you get a consultant will come in, they'll do all this work, they might even provide some recommendations, you get us a report, you go, wow, that's pretty cool, and then you put it on the desk, gathers dust for a year, and then they go, oh, I've got to do that report again and do it again 12 months later. So the idea of this platform is that it's that they can engage with it throughout the year, and hopefully by managing their actions online, and they can see the progress, and that sort of helps with the motivation and encouragement. And another big, emphasis of our platform is around that staff engagement, so that everyone can get involved. So I'll just, once you've added data into the app, this is, you start to see this sort of information, but I might just pop back here later, and I'll just start off with measure, which is where they do enter their data. Excuse me, having the odd cough. So down here on the left-hand side, you can see the emission sources that we currently capture. So electricity, gas, LPG, water waste, flights, vehicles, and paper. We're just about to also add stationary fuel, which I'm sure is going to be a big one for the clients, the ICN clients. So stationary fuel for generators or any sort of process, as well as hotel nights, ICT or IT equipment, catering, and yeah, a few others. But then, like I said, the whole process is about talking to the users that are signing up and seeing what other emission sources we need to add. We always will do it on a basis of who needs what, rather than just going crazy and adding things that people might not need. So yeah, when you get here, so we're currently seeing electricity, you can just click through the different options, and these all represent a bill that's been entered. They start off by adding an account. So this is where you add the account. I won't go through the whole process, but they basically can select if they have green power or carbon neutral power, if they have solar panels. We also have all the different utility companies listed there as well. Once they've set up their account, they can then go to add the bills. There's 3 different options. The first one is just adding a bill manually. Just put the from and to date, total consumption, total cost. Or if they can download CSV from the utility provider, they can then upload it. So that's quite an easy option. You can often download like 2 years worth of data at once, and then upload that. This is a new feature that we're rolling out across different utility providers, again based on the most popular ones in the app. We're calling it Bill Fetch, and that basically allows them to sign into their utility provider. And then our app will save and encrypt those login details, and then a bot in our app will go in, grab that data and put it into the app for them. So that's something that we're actively working on across different providers as well. So that's how you enter data. As you can see, hopefully it's pretty straightforward. It's designed to be really user friendly. You don't have to be, an engineer or even really technical finance person. It's designed that anyone can really jump in and use it. I'll just really quickly show you how to, when it comes to waste as well, we look at the different types of waste that they're adding as well, and whether it's weight or volume, and then we, in the back end of our platform, converts that all into the carbon emissions. So there's a lot of complexity in the back end that we've hidden from the users, and it all meets sort of all the greenhouse gas standards and protocols and reporting. We've tried to align as much of the calculations as possible with the Climate Active certification as well, although there's no direct link at this point in time. We can at least let the people know that it's very credible and it's using those same sort of calculations. We're publicly available. So that's measure. If I just jump into action, this is in a kind of a typical project management style layout where you've got your different columns, not started, in progress, etc. So when you add an action, it will land in the not started, and you just drag it across into the various columns. When you want to add a new action, you click that button. What we've tried to do is provide a bit of a strategic approach, so giving them the options of no cost actions through to the low, medium, high cost, or create their own action. The idea behind this was that often people just didn't know where to start and they go straight to sort of some expensive options. So when we encourage people to start off with, especially if it's just around an office, there's a lot of really simple behavior changes you can make. So this has found 28 no-cost actions under electricity, 12 under water, 11 under waste, etc. And we're constantly adding new actions to the app, and often based on what other users are doing as well. So if we just click on electricity, for example, again, this is kind of for more of an office-based environment, but it just shows each of these is an action that they can do. Has a title, a little bit of a description. Excuse me, if they say, okay, great, we're going to do this action, they just press continue. Has a little bit of a description there, which they can edit. They can completely delete and add their own if they want. They set a due date for it. And then they assign it to someone as well. So this really becomes their sustainability or climate action plan and management system. So if they press submit, then it'd land here and they're not started. If they click on it, you can see again who's been assigned, when is it due, and they can project management along the way by adding comments about how it's progressing. And once they move it into completed or abandoned, it just pops up with a quick excuse me, completion report. It literally takes less than a minute to fill in. It's just a few tick box questions like how easy was it to implement? Would you recommend it? Just like a 1 to 5. How much did it cost? Did you have a supplier? Would you recommend them? And this is purely to give us feedback on how all these actions are going. And if everyone's saying a particular action is horrible, then we'll remove it from the platform. And similarly, if it's a new action that that hasn't been done before and they say it was good, then we can add it to the plan for everyone else to see as well. So it's a bit of a sort of a peer learning or a citizen science approach to taking action. And yes, that's the action plan. In the track, this is where they can look at their progress. So it's a quick bubble chart of their footprint. So each bubble shows the different size of that particular emission source. They can then look at it from a cost perspective and a usage perspective. And then if they want to delve into a particular source, so let's look at electricity, they can look at it on a yearly basis. So here you can toggle. If they've entered several years worth of data, you can look at hopefully nice downward trends like that. Or if they want to look at it on a month-by-month basis, this is also quite helpful to see how you compare to the same time last year. And again, be able to look at it from a cost perspective and a usage perspective. So we find like this sort of view is quite helpful for staff meetings if if they're trying to engage people around their decarbonisation efforts. They can compare themselves with others there, and they can look at their whole business on a per staff member basis as well. If I jump into offsets, here they can choose to offset emissions through our platform, but we certainly don't want to be seen as an offset provider, or that we don't want that to be our primary purpose. We certainly want to be saying our focus is actions. So if they do want to purchase specific offsets from somewhere else, they can upload an offset certificate there. So you can have a look at the programs that are offered through our platform. We've actually partnered with a third-party provider called South Pole. They're one of the biggest offset providers globally. So we've chosen 4 of theirs to display here. They can literally just select that, and it shows the cost of it, how many tonnes they want to purchase, or they can upload their own certificate, and we just ask for a few bits of information to make sure they're credible offsets as well. And then we jump into reports. So once they're ready and they've entered all the information, they can generate their report. Just ask for their ABN, which year they would like to generate the report for, and then it will ask, it will remind them if they haven't purchased offsets, it will remind them, do they want to do that? You can always, they don't have to, and we certainly aren't saying that everyone has to go carbon neutral. They can skip them. It's just that if they want to be carbon neutral, they have to purchase them before they generate the report, because this status here will say carbon neutral business if they purchase the offsets. And then it just asks for a few little bits of information from them, little intro paragraph. This just helps to sort of really personalize the report. So a bit about them, a bit about their own goals, climate goals and targets. And then if it's not their base year, if it's the next report, it will ask why there's been changes. You know, hopefully it's going down, and then they can say, oh, the biggest change is from solar panels or from whatever it is. It will also ask them if they, have not included some sites, and if they haven't included some emission sources, it will also say, why didn't you include gas or whatever, and they can just say we don't have gas on the site. So our key thing around all of this is just to be transparent. So we're trying to capture as much information as possible, and our advice to any of the SMEs signing up would be just to display this report on their website, and hopefully they can create a sustainability or climate action tab on their own website to really encourage, to show the world what they're doing. Because we obviously all need to be worried about greenwashing, and the best way to avoid greenwashing is just to be transparent about how you've calculated your footprint. Over here in the settings, excuse me, this is where they can view their staff numbers and everything. That helps with the comparisons. They can add users here, so if they wanted to add all of their staff members, they can upload a CSV. Their subscription is here. They can cancel at any time or upgrade. And then that's just where they change their password. Just jumping back onto the dashboard, so you just click the V over here to the dashboard. This will just quickly, a bit of a snapshot, shows their carbon footprint to date right now, and then what it was at the same time last year. So it will show them what their improvement is, or how maybe it's gone up, and then how many tons of emissions they saved, and a quick snapshot breakdown of their emissions there. Abatements are, excuse me, things like if they have purchased green power, the electricity will be included in the total carbon footprint, but then the green power will be identified and then removed from the net footprint. Same with flights. If they've offset the flights at point of purchase, they'll be included in the total footprint, but then removed from the net footprint. And then they can have a look at it from a cost perspective and a usage perspective there as well. So I'll leave it there for now. And I'm sure we have lots of questions, but I think we are going to go back to the presentation briefly.
Oh, we're on mute.
You're
on mute, Andrew.
The host is on mute. That's never a good thing. So Vanessa, thank you so much for running through that demo. That was very insightful, and it's definitely very intuitive and easy to use. There was just one more slide before we do actually jump into some Q&A. We do have time for that, which is good. So we'll just jump back into the Prezo. And it was just this slide, but there's just this slide and one more after this. Vanessa, if you wanted to talk through this, if it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the web page that Karen showed before, it will direct people to the web page will direct people to our register interest page. That's so that we can sort of filter through them and try and have that initial conversation as well with the suppliers, because we really want them all to have the best journey that they can. So we want to make sure that they are aware that we'll be adding new emission sources for them and everything. And then if they want to ask questions, we're going to direct them to an email that will be directed to us. So we hope that you guys won't get bombarded with questions. Certainly, we'll be formulating a FAQ and some docs for you, and obviously you'll get this presentation. But feel free to sort of handball it off to us if you like as well. The suppliers, if they have questions as well, I probably should have shown you when I was demoing the app, but there's a little button down in the, bottom left. It's down on the bottom left, so they can, that's called intercom, and so they can always send us a message there if they have any sort of technical questions, and we can answer that for them as well. And yeah, you guys can feel free to email us as well if you have questions. Probably happy to provide our phone number to you guys, but we probably don't want to put a phone number on the website for all the suppliers at this stage. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the support.
You. Thanks again, Vanessa. And then just for everyone's update, here are my new contact details. So if you ever need to reach out on any of our products or services, feel free to obviously contact me as well. And if there are any direct inquiries to myself that I can't answer, I'll certainly be in touch with Vanessa and her team to get back to you as well, aside from the details that were on the previous slides. So we do obviously have time for some Q&A, and I'm sure that there will be some questions. So feel free to raise your hand in the chat, and I will. Owen, you're first off the rank, so just unmute yourself, Owen, and feel free to fire off that question if that's okay.
Yeah, no worries. I was sort of taking notes throughout the presentation. It was great. Well done, everyone, by the way. So just around the reporting, is it sort of intended to be quarterly or annually, or is that sort of yet to be sussed out? And if a supplier is seen to kind of go backwards for whatever reason, and they become non-compliant in that space, is there sort of reporting that is going to be shared with the Victorian government, or is that sort of in-house? And is there a mechanism in that case to enforce sort of coercive corrective actions? Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Good questions. And yeah, I'm definitely handballing those to you, Vanessa.
Well, you sure you don't want to have a go, Andrew?
I'm half.
Okay. You might have to remind me of them as you go. But the first one, in terms of reporting, it's generally accepted that you do the reporting on an annual basis. So you don't have, and just to be clear as well, this is all very voluntary. None of this is compliance related. You might have, those who do know a little bit about this space, is the NGERS, National Greenhouse and Energy Reporting Scheme. That's for bigger companies, and they do have to report, and that could well be quarterly. But in this sort of more voluntary space, it's very much on an annual basis, and it's always retrospectively. So you're always looking at last year's data, entering it in. So again, as soon as any supplier signs up, we'd be saying, look at all your records from last year and enter that in first. And if you are carbon neutral, you'd be offsetting all of last year's emissions, and then throughout the next 12 months, you can still continue to call yourself carbon neutral, even though you're not realistically, because you haven't offset yet. But that's sort of the expectation, is you're always sort of looking backwards. And then in terms of them going up or down, there are many reasons why some businesses might actually increase their footprint. And so we definitely don't want to be penalising people. A business might double their operations in a year, so obviously their footprint's going to potentially double as well. And that's, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a bad thing for the planet. We don't want to increase our emissions, but it's understandable. So again, that's why that reason for change in the report is there as well. So if it does clearly say they've gone up, then they can say we have expanded our operations and we have hired 50 more staff, whatever, and that's understandable. And again, it doesn't prevent them from being carbon neutral, because at the end of the day, they just offset all those emissions. What we want to be seeing is that they are still taking actions to reduce in amongst that. And that's also in that track page when we have the whole business or a per staff member basis. That's also an interesting thing for them to look at, because they may increase their whole footprint, but on a per staff member basis, it might still be going down because they're being more efficient in a lot of areas. So I think that answers that. In terms of reporting back to state governments, at this stage, it's nothing to do with sort of that compliance or anything. But I was about to say, hey, we can have, if you want to do an introduction, we can have a chat with the state government. But I'm sure the suppliers probably don't want you to do that. They're probably, and I think we should be encouraging them at this stage. It is voluntary, like just to be not daunted by it, not scared off, but that this is going to be a compliance thing, but this is them being proactive and taking leadership. Was that all of them? Oh, was there something else?
Oh, the other one was just about if it was to become an issue of compliance, just because I can see potentially down the road it becoming one of those things where it's like, you know, we have stuff for local content commitments in the policy space, so it's that thing of stuff changes over time, you know, new compliances sort of stuff happens. So in that case, is there a mechanism to enforce coercive corrective action? But I guess you sort of answer that because it's voluntary. So you can't really enforce corrective action if it's sort of a voluntary stake, and that sort of reporting isn't going back up. So yeah, so you sort of answered it.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I think that's not our role to do any of that. But I mean, if in the future, you know, the Victorian state government said we'll allow the ClimateClever report to be used for X, Y, and Z, they may well decide that could be used as a coercive thing. But let's stay happy and friendly over.
Yeah, that's it.
ICN ClimateClever world.
Thanks again, Owen. That was really good questions, by the way, and thanks, Vanessa, for answering those. Do we have any other questions from anyone who's pondering this update? Ray, jump in. Just off you go.
Yeah. All right. Hi, guys, and really glad to see how everything's progressed. So well done to Vanessa and all the ICNL team. It's not really a question, but one of the questions I frequently receive from some of the people that I talk to when I mentioned that we're partnering with ClimateClever is that whether you guys are endorsed or accredited by any organization. And I can see that you are a registered consultant for ClimateClever. Climate Active. So I was just wondering if it's worthwhile, you know, in some of the promotions to mention that as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Ray. Yeah, we aren't really. It's hard to be sort of endorsed in this sort of sector, but yes, we certainly can and probably should say that on. Maybe we can add that to the web page to say ClimateClever are Climate Active registered consultants. Hey, I've got you all here, so I may as well mention this because you will no doubt get asked by suppliers, how does this relate to Climate Active and Incident Pathway? We have had some conversations with them. Unfortunately, Climate Active is a little bit of a manual process at this point in time. They still use Excel spreadsheets. They have their own templates, which they sort of are tending to send out every sort of 6 months. You know, here's an updated version, and that's, you know, exactly what we've been trying to disrupt with the platform. You know, trying to get away from that sort of clunkiness of Excel spreadsheets, and so we can go in obviously and update all of our factors and everything anytime. So we are registered consultants. So if one of the suppliers says they'd like to be Climate Active, we would just take them through a sort of a separate process. We can absolutely put them in the platform as well. It can help to streamline some of the processes, but unfortunately, we still have to download the data from our platform and then enter it back into an Excel spreadsheet, which does seem a little backwards. But we can certainly do that. And yeah, so there are some benefits to doing that. There will probably just be a little bit of an extra cost on that because we have to prepare you know, applications and everything for Climate Active. And they are obviously a very well-known, reputable and rigorous certification scheme. So they'll probably require a few more emission sources to be included in their footprint as well. So that's sort of not really answering your question, but it was a good prompt to actually let everyone know about how that interacts as well.
Thanks, Ray, and thanks, Vanessa. And also thanks again, Ray, for obviously facilitating the introduction to Vanessa and her team. Without you doing that, we wouldn't be meeting today. So thanks again for doing that and being proactive. Do we have any other questions? Andy Balmain, fire away.
Vanessa, yeah, thanks for explaining a little bit more regarding all of this. I think you were alluding to the question I was going to ask regarding factory emissions, and typically from process lines and the like, you know, spray painting or welding or composites back in my day as well too. But is that where the Climate Active would be capturing those chemical emissions, as opposed to the result of offtake of power and the like?
When you say, is that where Climate Active, do you mean ClimateClever or Climate Active?
Well, who would be taking taking control of the measurement of those process emissions of type, because obviously they're also having a extensive impact on climate in all various degrees as well.
No, for sure. And that's the exciting challenge that we have ahead of us. That's exactly what we will start to include in the ClimateClever app as well. And that's why we sort of want to take them through the register your interest form as well, because we'll ask a couple of questions about them. We'll probably end up having an initial phone call with them as well. So if they start to say, oh, we've got X, Y, Z, and we're like, oh, that sounds quite complicated, let's have a large conversation. And then again, based on which tier that they would sign up to with us, we would start to probably initially do those calculations manually, and then see how we can actually build that into the platform, and to actually do the web development to incorporate that, especially if there's going to be multiple businesses that are using those different processes. But yeah, I guess right now we don't know what we don't know in terms of we're not sure which emission sources the business is going to have. So that's
And can I ask one more question, just regarding so if a client went to you directly, are they going to benefit by going through or being an ICN subscriber as opposed to going direct?
Yeah, so that's what we meant. I think Andrew mentioned at the beginning is we are going to pass on a 10% discount.
All right.
So yeah, so if they sign up, that's all right. That's all right. It was a lot of content we went through. Yeah, so we'll pass if that. So they have to. So if you can really encourage them to go through the ICN link, they'll get that discount.
Vanessa, if I may just add to what you were saying, Andy, and for the reference of everyone on the call, this has been a long process for us to get to where we are now. There's been a lot of consultation, both with Climate Active as well as with various different stakeholders, including Lend-Lease, including Siemens Gamesa. And to that point, and also in relation to the various different emission types that you were alluding to, Andy, as Vanessa alluded to in the presentation, it's a process, but we will gradually begin to add as those emissions become more apparent, right? And that's a process. So we don't, and to Vanessa's point, we don't know what we don't know, but both Lend-Lease as well as Siemens Gamesa have both been very open to working with us on that journey. For everyone's information, Lend-Lease is actually one of the most recognized primes from a climate active perspective. They are one of the most recognized and one of the most advanced primes in this space, and they're very keen to work with us on this journey. So that's a good point. So you'll see it evolving as we're on the journey.
Thanks, Andy, for your questions, Mike for jumping in there as well, and also obviously Vanessa for your answer. And we'll jump over to Jennifer Peck, who's got a question as well.
Hey guys, thanks for that, Vanessa. It was really interesting. I don't know, I had to jump on a call, so I don't know if I missed this, but is there a long-term plan for ICN to capture in Gateway the carbon emissions of, or sort of like the I don't know what if carbon emissions is the right terminology, but the amount of carbon a company uses throughout the past year? Is there the opportunity to translate that information over to Gateway for us to be able to share that, obviously as a potential benefit of to be able to compare companies?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that, Jennifer. That's the exciting thing about our platform, is that we do aggregate all of that data. And up until now, some of our other partners have been local governments, for example, where we might have a bunch of schools, a bunch of homes and businesses, and we can aggregate that all up and provide it to them. And that's what they love. That's the sort of data they're like, oh, we've saved this many tons or thousands of tons, and we've saved this much money. So in this part, in the short term, it's more about passing through the status to ICN. But if this is successful and we proceed with the sort of the next phase of this, the idea is that our platform will actually be built out by your team in Gateway, so the users won't see our branding and our colours, so they'll literally feel like it's all ICN. And then you guys will get access to all of that data. So that data will be yours to say, we've helped our suppliers reduce 2 million tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions.
Or be able to compare two suppliers and say this one's actively making an effort and has got their emissions down to X and this one hasn't. So therefore, if I guess thinking 5 years in the future, it probably will be reportable by everyone. So it's probably is going to come into play. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so Jennifer, if I can just add to what Vanessa's just said, and just adding to what I was talking about earlier with Lend-Lease and Siemens Gamesa, obviously in the project environment, it's going to become more and more of an imperative for suppliers to showcase their commitment towards net zero. And in fact, Lend-Lease have got some really, really aggressive targets that they need to meet. And obviously that factors in their performance on their projects. Which in turn will relate to translate to the inputs and the emissions reduction on the part of their suppliers. So it's a full ecosystem that we are eventually going to be sort of putting together that will help both the buyers or primes as well as the suppliers on the journey towards net zero.
Yeah, and I think the other thing worth mentioning, the other thing. Sorry, I'll just jump in. The other thing worth mentioning there on the back of what Mike has just said, of course, is that, and you've alluded to this, Jennifer, where you've got purchasing, procurement, and sourcing decisions being made in conjunction with social governance and ESG frameworks. So if there are three, let's say, electrical contractors bidding on work, and one of them has a badge on their profile that says that they're carbon neutral, and the other ones don't, then from a pre-qualification perspective, there could be some decisions being made about, obviously showing preference towards suppliers that have that badge versus the ones that don't. And as Mike just mentioned, Lend-Lease, as an example of a major prime who's taking this seriously, will certainly be looking at that from a pre-qualification process. Sorry, jumping, Vanessa.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is probably more for phase 2, but we've also had some sort of exciting ideas around tagging emission sources to projects as well. So if Lend-Lease did put a project out and said, okay, this one is going to be carbon neutral, we could potentially put a tag in there, and then the suppliers that ultimately get chosen to work on it within their own profile, they can say, oh, we use this many litres of diesel for that project. And so there'll be, and I think that just, like you said, will come in time as requirements get more and more tight around what actually needs to be done. So, at this stage, we're starting broader, but then we can really nut down and tighten some of those constraints around things.
Thanks, Vanessa. Rebecca Lee, you've got a question. Fire away.
Thanks. And thanks for your presentation, guys. The app looks really great, Vanessa. So just wanting to get a bit of an understanding around, will we as, I guess, state officers have a bit of an opportunity to play around with it, just so we kind of get a bit more familiar? I think just from a selling perspective, it's obviously a bit easier to kind of push things onto your client, or promote things to your clients, if we actually kind of know how to use it.
That's a really good point. I would suspect that all the state officers should really become ClimateClever officers, shouldn't they? No, absolutely. I think we'll work something out where you can, either have a demo account or probably you should do it for your office.
Yeah, awesome. And the other question that I had was probably maybe not so for yourself, but in terms of the badging that will be available, is that once somebody meets carbon neutrality, or is it just when you've signed up to ClimateClever that a badge will be available on the premium page?
That's also a really good question. I think what we've been discussing at the moment is there might be 2 badges. One that sort of says, it might, I don't think we've decided on the wording yet, but it might be ClimateClever Business. So and that's sort of denoting the fact that they've started the journey, they're doing something, and which is a fantastic step. And then there's the ones that are actually carbon neutral. So there might be 2 different badges that they're using, and that will only be available for those that have produced a report. So if they're just using their platform but they haven't produced a report, that won't be showing. It's only based on the report.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa, and good questions. I was just going to elaborate just very briefly. So definitely there'll be a badge for carbon neutral, and we're just finalising perhaps the wording of the second badge, which could be on our journey to carbon neutral. Jumping, Andy.
Give them half a badge.
Half a badge. Not a bad idea.
They can just be carbon.
Yeah. Owen Lane, you have a question?
Sorry, Andrew. Just before you do, Karen, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, so just sort of, it covers a lot of the questions that have been asked, but so even if a person hasn't been awarded a badge, they're still identified through ICN Toolbox as having started that journey. And even if you are not a premium subscriber, the industry specialists who are using ICN Toolbox will still see those companies which have qualified as carbon neutral with that badging within Toolbox. So whilst they won't be able to promote it externally if they're not a premium subscriber, the industry specialists will still have all of that information at their disposal when dealing with those project owners who are interested in companies who are either on the journey towards net zero or are taking steps to become carbon neutral. So I just wanted to just reassure you that even if the badge hasn't yet been awarded, that information will still be available through ICN Toolbox.
Thanks, Karen. So we're going to jump over to Owen for another question, and then Lewis, and we might have to wrap it up at that point as well. We will run out of time, so we've got time for two more questions. So Owen, if you can fire off again, please.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry to be a pain. I'm back again. So obviously the current sort of net zero targets are more floors than ceilings in at least the government space. If a target is updated beyond just net zero, obviously, Vanessa, you were talking about the reporting kind of being backdated to a year. Will that sort of really kind of deleteriously affect the reporting that happens if, say, a law gets passed halfway through the year, and then those sort of reporting things have to change? So suddenly companies are sort of having to meet more aggressive targets. Will that sort of affect the sort of reporting angle on things, like maybe in 10 years down the track sort of thing?
If it's 10 years down the track, we can certainly have time to, to address that then. If targets change midway through the year, it doesn't really affect our platform or the system. It's more that they just have to start doing a lot more actions to get their emissions down to meet those targets. I probably don't have time to talk about it here, but there is a distinction between carbon neutrality and net zero. Net zero is actually a very ambitious one. I don't think you can really go beyond well, you can go, I guess, positive and make a positive difference, but net zero, you can't offset more than 10% of your emissions. So carbon neutral, everyone can go carbon neutral tomorrow, just offset all your emissions better. So that's why it's net zero is a bit into the future. But I'm conscious of time, so let's maybe jump into that.
Thanks, Vanessa. Lewis, last question for the session, please fire away.
Okay, mine's a little bit more practical. Subscribers on Gateway, if they're undertaking this process using a different platform or a different provider, are they eligible for a badge?
That's a really good question, Lewis. I think we're going to have to take that one on notice and come back to you all with our thoughts on that. Definitely something that we've been pondering, but don't have an answer for you just for today, if that's okay. So look, we are at 2 o'clock, everyone. I just want to make sure that we are mindful of those that do have other meetings to get to. So I'll take this opportunity to also thank everyone for your participation on a Friday afternoon. Thank you all for making the time to join in. Big thanks and shout out to Vanessa and her team, as well as the ICN team in Canberra. Again, Ray, thank you so much for the introduction and for everyone that's been involved along this journey. And obviously, there are huge benefits for all the stakeholders, and we are really looking forward to the next steps. So have a fantastic afternoon, everyone, and have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. See ya.